Rachel Kowalski, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me today. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I've been wanting you on the podcast for the longest time. I was talking about you in the intro and how we are longtime collaborators. So let's dive in because I know a lot of my listeners have questions about AI and what it means in terms of courses. And I was just on a workshop the other day. I was teaching a workshop, Ray. You don't know this, but AI came up. Everything I teach now, every workshop I teach, it comes up. It's a
Yes,
hot topic, right? I'm sure people are asking you as a content developer and as a lawyer, right? That it's always questions are
100%.
always abound. Yeah. So for just tell me, what do you think as a lawyer, as a content expert, as a course expert, like what are your overall thoughts about AI?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you said that it's coming up a lot because it is coming up a lot for me as well. In fact, I was at dinner last night and it 100% came up with regard to creating content and, what were they going to be able to use, what was going to
Yep.
be protectable. And so I'd have to say almost every other day it does come up in conversation. So, me, Gina, I'm really about innovation. I think it's
Hmm.
exciting and creativity and whatever can ease that or augment that and make that better, I'm usually a fan of. But then there's that lawyer side of me that that is also very cautionary. So I like to know
Yes.
everything about it. So, I think like with everything else, there is a time and a place for artificial intelligence, for AI. So if you think about it, AI has been around in many aspects for quite some time. And so I know there's a lot of fear. People come to me as a lawyer because they're fearful about it, or even as a creative. And if people really stopped and thought about it, to help ease the fear around it for sure, like I think, there's always been image recognition for a really long time or audio transcription. We've been living around this for a really long time. So I usually kind of talk to people a little bit about that. Like, don't be fearful. There's always going to be
Yeah,
a
it's
really
great.
good placement for it.
Yeah.
And so I think anything that can augment and assist creativity is brilliant. So I think there's like a lot of personally, I feel like there's a lot of benefits. So I'll
Mm.
kind of talk about those a little bit. I think that of course we know it makes things faster.
Right.
It saves time. As a ghostwriter myself, along with being a lawyer, I think it's great for research or a quick proofread even. I think it also can ease writer's block. Now, I'm not saying be the writer, we'll get to that, but it can
Yes.
ease writer's block. So, it can help jumpstart the creative process by generating ideas or, say, like writing prompts, in that capacity. You can also write like short content. So, if you're writing a book proposal, right, and you're wanting to create a summary or a brief description, something like that, and I also think, as you would know, being this, expert marketer as well as course creator, improves your SEO, which can help your
Yes.
articles. It basically helps you create some more relevant content to your target audience. It can help focus that. And lastly, what I think is also exciting, which I was talking to someone about last night, is that it can also help scale your content. So it
Mm.
can help generate it in multiple formats and languages so you can reach a broader audience and expand your reach like globally. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit more, on this podcast, because there's also a way to approach that. So, those are all the major pros that I'm really excited about. Now, just briefly talking about the concerns, you know, these have been talked about ad nauseum. So I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on them, but there's quality concerns,
Yep.
incorrect information,
Yep.
um, right? Copyright infringement, plagiarism, all of
Yeesh.
that comes up.
Yes.
And there's like an ethical concerns. So sometimes people have chat GDP create something, but there's some bias. There could be some bias there that they may not be aware of. So it could favor one group based on race, gender, or like other characteristics. And this can be really subtle. So people may not pick up on what chat GDP, or not just chat, but any AR, I don't want to call out a certain platform,
Yeah.
but any AI generator, this can be a challenge. And the two bigger things I would have to say is that um, when you put your content, like some people are putting their content into a platform.
Okay.
Unless you know how that platform uses your content, you want to just be really careful. Like, I wouldn't say never do that, but you could lose the rights to your content in the respect that it becomes part of this generative content machine.
Okay, wait, time out here because I didn't even think about this before we hopped on. So say you talk about doing a summary, right? And say I have a course lesson or heck, like a blog or maybe a podcast outline or a podcast script. I could put it in there wanting a post or a summary highlights. So I've put my content into this machine, right? So what are you saying are the ramifications of that?
So I'd have to go through each individual platform, which
Yeah.
we
Okay.
don't
Just
have time
talk
to do.
broad
So what
strokes.
I would say
Broad
is
strokes.
broad
Yeah.
strokes. Whenever you use a platform, you want to go to their terms of use and their privacy policy and read, how do they use your content? How do they use your information? How do they use what you put into their platform? And that will vary, and it will vary with different stages. Like, let's just say in the positive, Chat DDP has two different levels, right? They have a basic level and they have a pro level.
Right.
And I know on the pro level, you can set it where it doesn't hold a history of what for very long, for what you put in there. And that's a positive for them, not having a chance to like bring it into the machine. So that's my general guidance, because I don't want it, this will be changing all the time as well. So I don't want to memorialize something on this podcast that may not stand past yesterday or today.
That's smart. Okay.
It's changing. This is changing like day by day, minute by minute. But that is my advice for, how is your content being used? How is your personal information being used by these platforms?
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I'm sorry, go ahead. Did I cut you off on that? Yeah.
No. So just always check that. And then, one thing that I have thought through and this is coming more from a ghostwriter, is that if you think about it, AI generally, it kind of lacks that emotional intelligence to create a story.
Right.
It can be descriptive, right? And can come up with really good words and facts and maybe word something really slick. But you can feel, I don't know about you. Well, I know you. You can, we can feel when a real story is being told with emotion.
Yeah.
And so I think that, is a really, really important aspect. And here's probably the biggest thing for creators to keep in mind. This would be my final nugget, importance is just remember that AI, it's not a new idea generator.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like, give me a prompt and I'm going to, we're going to create these new innovative ideas for you. They use existing data for content. So there's not latest trending ideas and topics. So what you're getting back, it may not be as fresh and innovative as you could do for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I love this. All right, let's break this down a little bit, because I want to go back to what you were saying about emotional intelligence and to tell a story. Like, I was looking online the other day on X. I can't even call it X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And this guy called out this story, and he's like, I could totally tell this is AI, because there was a lack of emotion. There was no real story to it. It was all about facts and figures, right? And he's like, I know this is AI generated. And I think we as course creators are storytellers. Like, I had Bo Eason on here, I had Dawn Eason, and a story is so important in telling those personal, vulnerable details of, I was just recording a podcast earlier about how I was feeling vulnerable because I was sick, and then my website went down, right? And that kind of vulnerability is just so important, and it's something that AI can't add to the equation.
Yeah, these very unique, personal, emotive stories and feelings.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real values. That's why creatives also come to me like they're worried that AI is going to take over their job. They're not going to be able to be writers anymore.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that. I think, there's always been an advent of something, computers, photographs, we're always going to be innovating as a society. Right. And I think the real key here is to create along with it and know when to be your most creative self and make sure you put that in there, and when to use it to help expedite something, or when you get stuck, or when you just want something kind of proofread, or you want to get some insight as to how to maybe word something differently, get a little bit of creative ideas, and then go back and start writing again.
Yeah, like using it as a source of inspiration, right? It's a tool in your
Right.
toolbox,
It's
not
cool.
necessarily like the source. So,
Absolutely.
okay, so I love what you're saying, and that it's not the new idea generator. Like you're the new idea generator.
Right. That's how I feel about it
Yeah,
personally.
that's
It,
smart. No, I think you're
yeah.
right. And we as creators, we still have the responsibility to innovate, right? To
Right.
be creators, like it's in the name.
Right.
I'm curious because you've seen them too. Like here's how to generate your course outline, right? We won't name who, but they're out there. How do you
Right.
feel about those? So I again think it should be inspiration, like if you're kind of stuck, but if you don't know your process and your outline, like we've got challenges here in my opinion as a course consultant. But what do you think about these outline generators?
Right. So, I have mixed feelings. So I have like a
Mhm.
personal feeling, but then I also just have a professional guidance feeling about it.
Sure.
So
Okay. Give me
I
both.
agree with you. I I think that, you know, as a creative and for creatives, I think what's really going to grab your audience is when ideas do come from you, and it's getting back to that core fresh ideas, innovative concepts, and those aren't going to come from AI, a generator. It's just not going to.
Mhm.
Now, one thing that you could do, now this would come down to almost like this talk about copyright. So when course creators are creating courses and they want to create an outline. Now, like a week ago, I was talking to a course creator just randomly about how she was trying to do it. And I said, well, here's just my general guidance as far as how would you use AI in this properly. And so, she could do general ideas, as a course creator, get
Mhm.
a general outline, get general prompts, get a structure maybe in mind, but then go back, almost like when you're writing a book outline, then you go back and you write those pieces, like
Yes.
final text. Let that text come from you.
Right.
And that's just more about how I would approach it. Because when it comes down to copyright protection, you write a course and you want this to be successful. So ultimately,
Right.
you want to be able to protect this, and you don't want it to be easily just copied or recreated or, restructured by somebody else. And so the point would be to be able to get this copyright and establish it and be able to legally protect it. And so the way the Copyright Office deals with this, it all comes down to two terms. So in March of this year, they actually issued guidance, and it's really helpful guidance on the copyright.gov website
Okay.
for works containing material generated by AI. And what they did is they really strengthened the point. They reiterated the human authorship requirement. And
Okay.
so, just for those that don't know what copyright is, it protects original works by human creators, so human authorship, fixed in any tangible medium of expression. So we can talk about like written, music, images, all of that. It's not ideas, it's not facts, and it's not concepts
Mm.
unless those are described or explained or illustrated, like fixed in a tangible medium of expression. And so that's why I tell creatives or course creators, like, sure, you know what? It's okay to maybe get some concepts or some ideas or, a structure in mind. That's not really copyright material. But when you
Okay.
actually go to fix the course, like write the course, write the book, write the content, that's where authorship comes into play. And they've been really, really clear that copyright protection does not extend to non-human creators.
Hmm.
So, that's an obvious problem with AI
Yeah.
generated works.
Right.
And I mean, that tells you right there. So it has to be a human creator mostly. But the thing with this guidance that is really useful is that there's also these levels of guidance
Yeah.
with regard to AI and human authorship. And it starts out with de minimis, which means minimal, or, and I'm going to have to repeat that.
Okay, so there's two levels. So tell me what
Yes.
the two levels are, the two tiers.
Right. So the two tiers, or the two distinctive terms,
Mhm.
are de minimis and appreciable.
Whoa. I'm not
So
going to remember
you have
that.
two different, this is two different spectrums. So you think about it
Yes.
like the spectrum where you have not much at all,
Right.
appreciable, which is like most of it. So think about like no AI, completely
Yes.
human, and completely AI generated.
Okay.
And then you have everything in
In
between. Like
between.
it's a sliding scale.
Yeah.
And so when I give guidance to creatives, as far as like, okay, so you're going to create some concepts and some framework, that's pretty de minimis. When it comes to the actual course, the appreciable amount of content you're
Yes,
going
a
to be
lot of
creating.
content that's not
I
covered
mean,
there,
that
right?
all of that text, you
Yeah.
actually wrote all of that text.
Yeah.
You've had this structure here, but you went and you filled in all of the really, concepts and wrote around all of that. And so in that respect, it would be so de minimis, you wouldn't even have to claim it on a copyright application.
Okay. And that's what we're striving for, I'm assuming,
That's what we're
right?
striving for.
Okay.
That's the optimal. I mean, the
Yeah,
optimal, in
optimal.
my eyes, is you
Yeah.
do all of it, really.
Right.
You come up with these amazing ideas, you figure out your client path and the journey that you want to send them on.
Yeah.
But let's just say you get stuck on that.
Yeah.
And, that's not your sweet spot of creation. Sure, get AI to help the wheels going, to help prompt you starting all of that, but create all of that content.
Yeah. Okay,
Or
I
let's
love
say
that.
you're like an illustrator and you're going to do the illustrations in your course as well. Try to do the illustration yourself and maybe minor Photoshop by AI to like sharpen something or sweeten something. So that's de minimis. And you can even claim it. In that point, you'd be like, look, I created this, either document or this image, and you state just very, it's very simple that you have the statement that you put in there that AI came over and edited it, or AI came and softened the image, whatever that case might be, and you can just very simply state what you had AI do.
Yeah. Okay.
And that is my general solid guidance for
That's your
not getting in
guideline.
trouble for for copyright registration.
Okay. I think that's very helpful. Actually, I tend to use AI when I need something very foundational and beginner, and my brain can't go back to remember like how to explain something from the very beginning, right? Because if I'm too far down the line on something, how do I explain something and break it down in a way that makes sense? And then that prompts me, oh yeah, got it. Then I can figure out how to explain it. But I would never use it, and I know, I get it, I'm a content creator.
Right, it might be easy for you and I to say that.
It's easy for you and I. So I guess if people are listening and they want to use it more, what would you say? Right, for like those who content doesn't come as easily.
So again, I would just maybe pitch and catch with AI. Maybe that's a good way to say it.
Yeah, that's
pitch
smart.
and catch with them. Don't put in a prompt and expect it to generate a whole chapter, let's just say, or let's just say a section of a course, and it generates, you put in a prompt and it generates all of the text for that. Then none of that would be copyrightable. It would not, you would not be able to protect
You'd not be able to protect yourself.
Right. If you're willing to accept that, there's always that camp as well. If you're willing to accept that you're going to put the course out there and you're not worried about copyright protection because it's been AI generated, that is always an option. Not that's like worst case option, quite honestly. But you kind of want to be more on the de minimis side, so that even like, let's say you create, there was a graphic comic book. This is a very infamous case now with regard to AI. And it was Zara of the Dead. And what happened is the author created this graphic novel, Zara of the Dead, and wrote all the text. All of that was original. Then she created all of the images in Midjourney and only photoshopped very fine. So let's just say I had like the image that was generated by Midjourney with like a shadow on the lip. Photoshop that out. And so she claimed that, she was trying to claim that that was enough of a, appreciable change that she should have the copyright to the images. Long story short,
Wow.
so originally she had applied for the copyright, got the copyright for the whole graphic novel, then had put on social media that the images had been created by AI, by Midjourney. And Copyright Office was like, oh, okay, went back and revisited it, kind of stripped it of its copyright registration. And then they kind of went back and forth about it. And now, as it stands, that now the text is copyright registered and protected, and the images are not, for the
Are
reason
not.
I just explained.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I might be opening up a can of worms here, and we can bring it back. But I talked about this book, and it's actually holding up my mic stand right now.
Oh, nice.
The Anatomy of a Breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
And the author talks about how nothing is truly new these days. And he talks about how musical artists would borrow from each other and continue to borrow. There's a really interesting chapter. I'll actually find it and post it in the show notes. I don't know. What's your take on that, though, that there's nothing truly original these days? We borrow from each other. Maybe, does that make you cringe as a lawyer?
That's a hard question as a lawyer.
Does it make your content body sing, but as your lawyer cringe a little bit?
Just a little bit. But I think my brain is still a little bit more of the creator.
Yeah,
I would say so. Have always been inspired by something.
Okay. Right. I know you and I can go back and forth all day on this and talk about sidebars. What's something that we haven't covered that you wanted us to know as course creators?
Well, I think the way to think about AI right now for me is I like how it expands your options, your global offerings. Okay. And I think that's a really exciting piece of this.
Okay.
And so a really good example is you write a book. Let's just say a short book, and it's first written in, let's just say it's written in Spanish first. Spanish is your first language. You've written it in Spanish, and then you use AI to translate that book into English. So you've authored it in one language.
Yeah.
And then you had AI translate it into another one. And what I would say is whatever version, like English, whatever your first version that you wrote yourself, register that with the Copyright Office. Then you have AI translate that original copyrighted material. And you can get it in German and whatever language you want, but you hold the copyright to that original text. So if someone infringes upon that, it actually goes back to, let's say they infringe on the English version, right? The original version is Spanish. They infringe on the English, version of it. Then it goes back to the copyright protection of the original copyright, not the translated version.
Ooh, that's helpful.
So I think that's like really clever and helpful. So when I say this is like expand your offerings, don't be fearful in that way, but be smart. Like always copyright protect your original content, and then generate what you want off of that. Okay. But get that original authored content, human authored content protected, and then start playing around with, the translations, with the expansions, whatever you want. And I think that's a clever way to use AI and still be protected moving forward.
Okay, awesome. That is a hugely great tip. Thank you, Ray. Where can we learn more about your ghostwriting, lawyer services, whatever you want to tell us about?
Right. Well, I'm more than happy to connect to anyone. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, and it'll be a creative lawyer and ghostwriter. Okay. So I'm a lawyer and ghostwriter. That's how it's me, Rachel Kowalski on LinkedIn. Toss me out a note with a question. Connect with me there. I also have a website, which is thecreativelawyers.com. So if you want to talk about more of these nuances of copyright, if you want to learn about other ways to protect, whether it's trademark or, other ways to protect your content or expand it, talk about this expansion piece, reach out to me there. And I would love to connect with you.
Okay, perfect. We'll link to both of those in the show notes. And thanks again for coming on and sharing your expertise.
My pleasure.